It's been a strange journey these past 5 years, 5.5, going from sports fan to not really a sports fan, and it's a journey I never really had any intention of taking. On the day I turned 42, I was a lifelong fan of my local NFL team and a lifelong fan of my local baseball club, and I didn't have any reason to think that was ever going to change. When we adopt the tribal identity of being a supporter of our local sports ball team, yes, as an ex-fan, I am now allowed to say sports ball. We expect that it's going to be a lifelong affiliation. When we're little kids, we don't stop to think, maybe I shouldn't get too emotionally invested in all this just in case the dickhead owner moves the team out of town when I'm in my 40s. We latch onto the team because it's part of the local culture, at least that's how it used to work. And that tribal affiliation becomes, in most cases, a permanent part of our identity. For most of my life, if a new acquaintance had asked me to briefly describe myself, then among other things, I probably would have said I'm a Chargers fan and a Padres fan. But then 2016 happened, the year of Kaepernick. The year the NFL leadership decided, it would be a great look if we started carrying water for leftist radical groups and encouraged our players to disrespect the country and the flag every chance they get. It'll be awesome! During and after that season, a not insignificant portion of the NFL's fan base quit the sport entirely, and for understandable reasons, but I was not one of them. I complained loudly about all the kneeling and the race hustling and what have you, but I was still in front of the TV every Sunday to see my team find a new and inventive way of losing that week's game. They even invented a word for it. It's called chargering. I used to be offended by that joke. Now I think it's pretty hilarious. Which is to say, I was willing to look past the anthem kneeling and all the other political histrionics because supporting that team was an integral part of my identity. I didn't know how not to support the team. And that was a curse more often than it was ever a blessing, but sports, they turn us into masochistic creatures, don't they? We will happily eat shovels full of shit year after year, decade upon decade, and if we get one little taste of the brass ring, if our team wins a championship one time, then we don't regret all the shit eating. The shit eating and the frustration and the near misses are what make the brass ring taste all the sweeter when you finally get it. But I will go to my grave without knowing what that is like because January 12th, 2017 happened. And then I had no more football team. Whatever affection I felt toward the lightning bolt and the powder blue, it was replaced by intense, seething antipathy. If someone asks me what NFL team I support, I say, fuck the Chargers. On the very rare occasion when I see someone around here with a Chargers hat on, almost as an involuntary reflex action, I say, fuck the Chargers. Imagine the way you feel about your team's most hated rival and then multiply that by 20. And that's how it feels when your team bails town after 56 years. For the first 2 years after they left, I still watched every game because it's fun watching bad people embarrass themselves. I'm sorry. It got old eventually, though, as these things often do. The bad feelings became less close to the surface. Although, make no mistake, fuck the fucking Chargers. And besides, baseball's my favorite sport anyway. I'm never going to lose that, right? Am I? Now, I've mentioned a couple times before how ever since I was old enough to spell the words and to have a basic sense of right and wrong, I have hated the goddamn designated hitter. And ever since I've been alive, there have been whispers and rumblings that one day the goddamn designated hitter is coming to the National League. Well, that day ignominiously arrived in the summer of 2020 when MLB announced that for the truncated, empty ballpark 60-game fake cardboard cutout season that they were about to play, both leagues were going to feature the goddamn designated hitter. And that's my red line. It's been my red line my entire life. If the National League starts using the goddamn designated hitter, I am finished. And so I was. I didn't watch any baseball games in 2020. My team went to the playoffs for only the 6th time ever, and I still didn't watch. But then a weird thing happened last year in 2021. The National League reinstated Rule 1.01, which is the first rule in the book, the one that says baseball is a game between two teams of 9 players each. Not 9 plus a goddamn designated hitter. So I said, cool, my red line has been uncrossed. I figured, naively as it turns out, that maybe MLB had come to their senses. Maybe they got lots of upset emails from National League fans just like me saying we don't want the goddamn designated hitter. And we're prepared to stop watching the sport because of it. Maybe they came to their senses and listened to what the fans want. But nah, they didn't. You see, baseball is currently being run by men who absolutely hate baseball. You may have thought baseball was a pastoral game, a game with no clocks and with its own unique pace and rhythms, a game where you can have a conversation with your seatmate between innings and there's no background noise that's louder than a nice old lady playing an organ. Oh no, says Commissioner Rob Manfred, we can't have any of that. Baseball is only compelling if we make it as close to a baseball video game as we humanly can. Baseball needs to be fast, hard-hitting, dumb, and very, very loud. We need lots and lots of home runs, because ladies love the long ball. And when you go to the ballpark, you need to be bombarded between innings with inhumanly loud, pulsating hip-hop music so that you have to scream your lungs out to be heard by the person next to you with whom you were trying to have a conversation. And you know what else we need? We need more playoffs. Lots more playoffs. There's 3 wild cards in the NFL playoffs, right? Well, damn it, give me 3 wild cards then. This way every middling, mediocre team in the league can pretend they have got a chance for the postseason. It'll be great. Now, some of us, baseball purists, I believe we're called, we used to think that was one of the best things about baseball. Baseball used to be the one sport where you damn well had to win your division if you wanted to advance to the playoffs. You didn't go to the preseason on the strength of a third-place finish 5 games over 517 games out of first, because that's stupid. I could go on at some length here, of course. The phantom runner on second base to start extra innings, that's a complete affront to the integrity of the game, and I hear it's going to get even worse next year. Next year, the bases are going to be 23 inches square instead of 18. There's going to be a 15-second pitch clock in a game where clocks are not supposed to exist. They are even going to outlaw the infield shift. And the goddamn designated hitter isn't going anywhere. Everything my favorite sport could have done to turn me into a non-fan, it has done. My team is playing a playoff game right now at this very moment, and I am happy to report that I don't give a damn, because I would rather be here with you fine people. And you, Jim Eagle. From high atop the battlements of Castle Curmudgeon, where the term suicide squeeze refers to what happens if you are unlucky enough to get in between Stacey Abrams and a big bag of chicken wings. Good evening, Mr. and Mrs. America, and all ships at sea. Welcome to the program. I am your eponymous host and humble servant. And with just a precious few weeks remaining until the 2022 midterm election, it seems that the ruling Democrat Party has settled upon what they believe is going to be a winning strategy. But where Warren Harding promised a return to normalcy, where Herbert Hoover promised a chicken in every pot, President and semi-animated cadaver Joe Biden is taking a more out-of-the-box approach. He's going with weed and nuclear war. Now, yesterday was a big day for freedom, as President Biden issued a blanket pardon to every American who is currently incarcerated in federal prison for simple marijuana possession, and thus, by the end of the day, 0 people had been reunited with their families and loved ones on the outside, because you'd probably have to go back to the days of Harry Anslinger and the Bureau of Narcotics to find an America where there was anybody incarcerated for simple marijuana possession. They've always told us these people exist, but they have tended to have a very difficult time over the years in actually producing one. And when you do pin them down and get them to start listing examples, it is always one of 2 varieties that they come up with. The first is people who were on probation and went back to prison for smoking weed, which doesn't count. And the second is people who pled down from distribution to possession as part of a plea deal, which also doesn't count. Pro-crime, pro-criminal activists have gone to great lengths, tremendous lengths, and they've been quite successful oftentimes at creating the perception in the public consciousness that there are tens of thousands of people currently doing hard time in prison because they were innocently snapping a bong load in their bedroom one day and the FBI SWAT team burst in and hauled them off to the federal pokey. Because if your ass had been paying attention, you'd know that only happens to pro-life activists and anybody who has ever had lunch with Donald Trump. But it's not true. It was never true. Even when John and Yoko were singing dumbass hippy-dippy songs about John Sinclair, they were lying. John Sinclair was in for a probation violation involving a firearm possession charge. They charged him for the 2 joints because it was standard procedure at the time to charge a guy with everything that was chargeable that you had on him. But the truth is boring sometimes. Sometimes the truth is too mundane to turn into a shitty, overrated protest song. Your fake artist wife can't very well bang a bongo drum to that. So you just invent a new, more convenient reality where they threw this poor innocent man in the penitentiary for 2 joints. My God, it's such an outrage. We've got to do something. Now, from Joe Biden's perspective, I don't know what he thinks this does for him politically. If he's decided that stoners are going to be the population subgroup to which he ingratiates himself in the hopes that they magically come save his party from calamity, then I would politely remind the president that voting requires getting up, getting dressed, going to a place, and doing a thing that requires mental acuity. So stoners may not possess the required skill set for what you are hoping they do for you, Mr. President. That's all I'm saying. But you know what my favorite part about this is? It's the fact that the president who did this was Joe Biden. Now, let's just go out on a limb here just for rhetorical shits and giggles and say there actually are 1 or 2 people federally incarcerated for weed possession. What law do you suppose put them there? Because I'm guessing there's about a 103.7% chance it was the 1994 crime bill, of which Joe Biden was the primary author and lead Democrat sponsor. The bill he talked about for 20 years like it was the capstone achievement of his entire career. Which it probably was, because it's amazing how little legislating a man can actually do even when he has been a professional legislator for 36 years. But then, when he was in danger of not being re-elected in 2012, Barack Obama decided he had had just about enough of living in a post-racial America where we have achieved Dr. King's dream and everything is just hunky-dory now. Because, damn it, I am in danger of losing to this idiot Willard Romney if we don't drag the racial grievance machine out of its mothballs and get that damn thing fired up again pronto. But as election year strategies go, though President Obama, he thought this one's going to work a lot better if there's some white guy I can throw under the bus, a white guy I can implicitly accuse of being a racist without actually coming out and saying it. Wait, I've got it. I know just the guy. Joe, could you come in here a moment? And so the 94 crime bill, Senator Joe Biden's crowning signature achievement, was declared a racist law. Even more humiliatingly, Biden was made to go around giving speeches about what a racist law it was that he had authored, and then spent 20 years bragging about authoring. That was the first time we ever heard the doctrine of disproportionate impact at the national level. The notion, which is it's an article of faith on the left today. It might as well be the first commandment of wokesterism, which says that if you take all the people convicted of a certain crime, and if a majority of them are non-white, then the only explanation for that is that the law is racist, and it was created expressly for the purpose of persecuting minorities. Even a lot of people on the right have fallen for some of the mythology that's been built up around the supposed racistness of the 94 crime bill. Here's one I know you've heard before. The 94 crime bill is automatically racist because it created harsher penalties for crack cocaine than powdered cocaine. I bet 75% of the Republicans in Congress would sign that memo right now because they're idiots. Did the 94 crime bill create a different and more stringent standard with regard to crack cocaine? Why, yes, it did, and why the hell shouldn't it have? What drug had been decimating entire American cities since 1986? Here's a hint. It wasn't powdered coke. The bill created harsher penalties for crack because crack was a far more serious threat, and that's why we're not supposed to talk about this, so keep it on the down low. Some of the people who were the biggest advocates for that supposedly racial disparity in sentencing 94 crime bill were black Democrat members of Congress from inner city districts. But hey, when you've got a compliant regime media on your side, you can memory hole any damn thing you need to memory hole. So Obama says, Joe, I want you to get out there and tell the whole country that you wrote a racist crime bill and you're really sorry and you're going to try and be less racist in the future. And to his credit, Joe really did try hard to complete the assignment to the best of his ability, for it was only weeks later that he famously stood in front of a crowd at some NAACP event and announced that Willard Romney wants to put y'all back in chains. And again, just a year prior to this, we were living in a post-racial utopia, where America has now elected its first black president, who also happens to be the 44th consecutive white one, but they don't like talking about that either, so shut up. All the racial strife of the past is behind us now, and it's nothing but fair winds and following seas from here on out. And it's still never occurred to anybody, least of all Joe Biden, at this point, that the '94 crime bill is a monstrous Jim Crow-style monument to institutionalized white supremacy. Probably because it never was. You know, and that wasn't the only time. There were quite a few others, where it seemed like Obama was purposely setting out to make Biden humiliate himself. And that's a trend that's even continued right into Biden's own presidency. Who can forget the President of the United States forlornly shuffling around the room, unable to get the attention of the rock star former president who doesn't have the time of day for him, no matter how loudly and angrily he shouts. I mean, you got the first mainstream African American who is articulate and bright and clean and a nice looking guy. That's a storybook, man. It was on 31 January 2007 when Biden infamously uttered that line at a coffee shop in New Hampshire, probably never thinking it would become one of the most notorious gaffes in a career that is largely defined by unfortunate slips of the tongue. It's 22 months until the election, over a year even until the first primary. Joe is already out there campaigning, pressing the flesh, sniffing the public's hair, grabbing its ass, making it feel like it needs to go take a shower immediately. If you're Barack Obama and the whole theme of your campaign is let's leave all that racial stuff in the past and move on already, then it's counterintuitive that you should pick for your running mate a guy who is a former segregationist senator, after all, who has a long history of making inartful statements on matters of race, and who has made remarks about you yourself during this very same campaign that could be reasonably construed as, if not outright racist, then certainly racist adjacent. Unless, and I still have no better theory than this one, unless choosing Joe Biden was a literal dog whistle to racists, unless it was the Democrat Party's way of saying, oh, it's okay, there's no need to be afraid of the dark-skinned fellow with the foreign-sounding name. If a good old boy like Joe Biden is willing to run on the same ticket with him, he can't be all bad, right? If there are any leftists with us here tonight, I have a homework assignment for you. Tonight, as you are gazing proudly at the Ukraine flag in your Twitter profile, you'll find it right up there next to your pronouns. I want you to take extra pride in the fact that you are supporting innocent civilians being dragged into the street by their own country's government and shot dead without charge or trial. This is no conspiracy theory. There is no news organization that we have to believe or disbelieve. Why? Because the Ukrainian defense minister is openly bragging about it. He's saying, yep, anybody who is suspected of harboring pro-Russia sentiments, they are getting one in the back of the head, because you're welcome. Because nothing says democracy like extrajudicially executing political dissidents en masse. So take extra joy in that tonight as you are cuddling with your Vladimir Zelensky sex doll or whatever it is you do. Last thing for tonight. You remember earlier this year, after our disastrous pullout from Afghanistan, when the defense contractors were very clearly lighting up the White House switchboard day after day after day, saying, we need a war, Joe. Where's our new war, Joe? Want a new war, Joe? Give us a new war, Joe. And Biden responds by basically spending an entire month practically begging Vladimir Putin to invade Ukraine. I think he's going to invade. I really think he's going to invade this time. I really extra super duper think he's going to invade. He's got no choice but to invade now, folks. And then, shockingly, he invaded. I'm getting that feeling again lately, with the president seemingly wishing out loud for nuclear Armageddon and actually using the term nuclear Armageddon. Now, I grew up in a world, you probably did too, where presidents did not make casual use of terms like nuclear Armageddon. Do you think Joe Biden would actually wish for nuclear war? I do. I don't doubt that for a moment. Think about it like you were a narcissistic politician. Joe's been spending his whole life trying to get to the spot where he is. And he's been a total disaster in that job, arguably the worst president in history. The guy wants to have an historical legacy. but not as a complete joke of an idiot who fell up the airplane stairs and took a dump on the Pope. Allegedly. He might view nuclear war as the only thing that could overshadow his crippling ineptitude and change the terms by which history defines his presidency. Is it horrifying to think about? Yes, hell yes. It very much is, but when you select dull, unexceptional, undistinguished men to be your leaders, don't be surprised when they plunder you into the Third World War when they were just trying to make their encyclopedia entry sound a bit better. And that's all I've got for tonight. I hope your week was agreeable. I hope your weekend is likewise. I'm going to do a live stream Sunday. I don't know what it's about yet. If you've got any fresh ideas, let's hear it in the comments or the chat. Either way. Until next time, thanks very much for watching. Do not comply. Get off my lawn.